It is 6 o'clock, so I'll call to order the May 25th meeting of the Lake Lemon Conservancy District Board of Directors. We do have, let's see, all but one member present, either in person or on the remotely. Debbie is remotely. So we do have a quorum. With that, we'll move into public comments. Any individuals wishing to make a comment to the board are welcome to speak. I would ask that you please identify your name. If you know what district you're in, also identify which sub area you reside in. And we ask you to contain your comments to 3 minutes or less. When you get to 3 minutes, I'll ask you to wrap up any comments you have. Any members of the public wishing to make comment tonight?
Go ahead. Me be first? Okay. Get my note out here. When's my time start when I get up there?
When you start talking. I won't immediately shut you off. I'll just let you know.
Would you like a second timer? Nine.
He can senior privileges, Mike.
I know. Gentlemen, I got a few things here to say in a short time to say them. I hope you will ponder these things. I'm Robert Steele. I live on the corner of Lakewood Drive and North Shore Drive. This is my 51st year living there. And most of them I felt secure and content until this conservancy captured me. And that did away with my feeling of security and contentment. They're both gone. The taxes this year worked me up. I think they're absurd. I never saw such an increase. And I'm getting no benefit out of it. The working of taxes such as dredging the lake can stabilize the value of waterfront property and lots with moorings nearby as they keep it navigable. I understand that, but that does nothing for me. So they're the ones that should pay for that, not somebody that's landlocked like me that has no rights at all. Taxes diminish the sellability of my property. An example would be if I had to sell it and somebody came down from town looking for a beach hollow, that's what I got, to move out and have some peace. And I had what they liked, and they'd ask about the taxes, and I'd tell them, they'd say, well, we can find one outside the conservancy and won't have these taxes on our back. So that's how it affects the sellability of my land. Let's see. And I charged the board, the planning, rezoning some of these captured lots when they drew the boundaries and make a way for people like me to get out of it. I'm on fixed income and God only knows what kind of taxes are going to be raised in the future. And I hope you'll ponder the things I've said, and I appreciate the opportunity to put them to you. And I'll be asking later about maybe a plan for rezoning some people that was captured in this zoning thing and not have no benefits at all from being in it. None. Now, they tell me I have a right to a dock. I think they got a waiting list. It would be 3 to 5 miles away from where I'm at. And if I advertise my property like that, I can just see people lining up to buy it. That's supposed to be a joke. But anyway, basically I got no rights at all. The lake, it does no good for me. And I had a boat years back and I used the marina. And I can do that out of money and save myself a lot of money and heartache. I appreciate the opportunity to say that. And I hope you'll ponder what I said. Thank you very much.
Thank you for joining us tonight.
Next.
How you guys doing? JJ Miller, I'm in District 7. I think you guys probably all saw my emails over the last couple of weeks. I didn't see anything on the agenda about discussing the debris cleanup extent, so that's what we're here to talk about. I'm hoping that that's gonna get discussed amongst you guys today. I don't know if there's gonna be a part of this, or once you get into your meeting, but we're here to figure out what we can do to get things cleaned up now.
I can talk on that for a second. We did remove a lot of the big debris. There is a lot of small leaves and sticks and stuff that has sunk to the bottom. I can agree with that. I was trying to think of the best possible way to do that without actually having to go in and dredge the whole area. And one of the things that I was thinking about, since you said there'd be a willingness to work together a little bit, is maybe when the docks are out, if we put the docks in a different location, so we could run equipment on that shoreline, a potential compromise would be going in there and we could actually push the small stuff, since we can't grab it with the excavator thumb and stuff, maybe we can go in there, push it to the seawall, and then potentially partner again like a grapple truck or something that could grab it from the shoreline.
That would potentially work. I mean, we talked about this last year though. And I asked you guys to come down and do some work while the docks were out, right? And came down, cleaned some stuff up, said we'd come back. We'd heard that too, and then a couple weeks later, no, we're not coming back. Now, part of the deal when the seawall got approved is you agreed to continue to manage debris down there. There is debris down there. My expectation, because of that resolution that was passed, is that you'll continue to manage it. So we need to figure out how we can get in there and get that out. And it's not so much dredging down there. We're not digging up lake bottom. This is debris that comes in, it sinks. It's done it year after year after year, and there's finally just too much of it. There's feet of debris down that hasn't ever been cleaned up, and that's what we're expecting you guys to come in and do. You can get to that with your barge, with the equipment that you do have. That's what I'm expecting you guys to do, because you agreed to do it.
If I might ask, so how large is the stuff? I mean, have you actually gone out there and walked around? Or?
Yeah, I've been out there in it. There's big logs, there's just clumps of tons of little debris, sticks, limbs. I mean, you pick a size, it's down there. It's everywhere. All the way out to the ends of the docks, and another solution I have is if we can get a drawdown, I can get something in there to get all that piled up, but I don't really see that happening anytime soon because of the bigger projects you guys have going on. And so I want to see what we can do about it with the equipment that is available until I can get in there and do more work.
But Adam, this is Debbie, didn't you say that our equipment can't grab that small stuff? That's why you're coming up with maybe an alternative, and I don't know what the cost on that would be or anything like that. And I'm sorry, I don't really, I don't know how many years ago the resolution was either, where we put the seawall in and agreed to take care of it. So I guess the board maybe needs a few more facts on it.
Things I get, like you can't pick that up. I totally understand. The bigger stuff that's further out, and I sent some pictures, you can see logs below the water sitting there. I mean, if you walk around, just imagine that it's that way everywhere, all the way out.
And if we did have, if some of that was marked so we could see it, then we could potentially go spot grab stuff. I know historically, there's some grandkids and stuff, and if we can have somebody point it out, then we can grab like some of the bigger stuff that's there.
I just need to know when you can come down. I'll get out in the water and tell you where to grab.
Or we can get together and.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Anyone else wishing to address the board tonight? See none, we'll move on to administrative items. One item, approval of April 27, 2023 annual board meeting minutes.
Yes.
I would entertain a motion to approve.
I second.
Okay, we'll take Steve as the motion and Debbie as the second. Any discussion on the minutes?
I will abstain. I logged on, but then I gotta run.
No worries, completely understand. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye, and Debbie, I'll do a roll call for you.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Debbie,
Aye.
we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in favor and 1 abstention. Motion passes. Next item is treasurer's report. I'll turn that over to Debbie.
Okay. In your packets, you have the April 30th financial statements. Couple of things to point out since we're just like starting in the season. There's not a lot of earth-shattering information, but you'll notice that the fixed assets went down because we sold the dump truck and we basically, took that $225,000 off of there, and it actually was sitting in other fixed assets in that 1680 account. So shows our total fixed assets at a cost value of $854,000. Those proceeds went in the construction account, as we discussed at the prior board meeting. And so now our construction account at the end of April had $404,000 in it. So that was a big help. We still owe on our bonds, our biggest liability, $1,090,000. And I know I just approved a voucher for a principal payment on that. So overall, our equity is $1,010,000, of which, it's assets minus liabilities. So it's probably not a true number because that's not really the true value of our fixed assets. If you look at the P&L for the month of April, we had about $37,000 in income, sales of watercraft permits, really made up the lion's share of that, and launch fees since the weather is getting nice and warm. In our park improvement fund on the expense side, we had total expenses of $72,000 and year-to-date $182,000. That park capital improvement fund, that is that cumulative conservancy improvement fund tax that we collect. That was to have Loveland Electric put in the electricity so that we could run events and things of that nature. So that's what that $2,250 is, just for your information. And that's also one of the items in the vouchers that you'll later be approving. Insurance, $12,000, and settlement mitigation, we made a payment of a little over $33,000. So those things comprise the lion's share of the $72,000 in expenses. I'd probably like to jump now to just look at the, I think this is interesting, the P&L, the budget versus actual, which is kind of hard to look at early on this early in the year, but I found it interesting that our sublease and our access fees that we've collected already total like $36,000. That's $6,000 over what we budgeted for the year. So I think the billing and the collection of those seems to be going much more efficiently now. The other income in that 4120 account, it's actually over our budgeted income of $10,000, and a piece of that is related to the truck sale and getting $235,000 for it, and the rental that we had paid that was applied to the original purchase price. Did I say that right, Adam?
Yes, it was a rent-owned purchase. I rented it for about a month, right near $10,000 that was applied to it. So our actual purchase was $225. When we sold it for $235, the $225 payment got moved from our assets to our general fund, and then that extra $10,000 was shown as revenue for that sale.
So no tax money coming in yet. We won't see that till June. We won't see it in May.
$1,000 a month, we rented it for 2 months.
I think just the,
Okay,
I'm not sure on
I
that.
don't have it in front of me,
Yeah.
but then we mortgaged it for 20 years. So even though we sold it, it's still on our mortgage. It's still on our bond at 2 5/8%.
We sold it, put all the money back into the construction account. So all the proceeds went back in the construction account, so we never really spent the money. And we're going to need that money, Mike, to make our payments on the dredging. And that's the cash flow analysis we did. And that's why we decided, a large part why we decided to sell it. Are there any other questions or comments or anything the staff would like to add on the financials? Hearing none, I guess I've moved to the next item.
Malcolm had a question.
Malcolm has a question.
Okay,
Can
couldn't
you hear
hear
me?
you.
If I talk loudly, can you hear me?
I can now.
Okay, in the percent of budget down at the bottom there, it shows minus 2,586% change. I'm curious what caused that, or does that number not mean anything?
It probably doesn't mean a whole lot, only because the budget is for the whole year.
Okay.
A lot of entities will budget throughout the year, like even if it's cyclical, they'll have the software and they'll be able to, do January, February, March, do it kind of by month. And we've always just done it for the full year, knowing that we're a pretty seasonal business. That makes sense?
All right, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Just on the visa, Adam Dental, so,
Oh, are we moving on to the vouchers now?
okay.
Okay, so we can discuss the approval of vouchers for $65,259. As I look through that, there are a lot of small things within that Visa card, which I think is what your question relates to. But again, the lion's share of the overall amount that we're going to be approving relates to insurance and that payment for the sediment management and Loveland Electric. But go ahead with your question, Mike.
I didn't know what Adam Dental was.
So that's paid by the Conservancy and then taken out as a reduction. So if you go down to the payroll summary, you will see the health insurance. So it is a payroll deduction for myself, so it's a net zero for the Conservancy.
Any other questions or concerns? If none, I guess I'd like a motion to approve the April vouchers in the amount of $65,259.44 or 14.
Steve has moved. Do I have a second? Sure, I'll second. Malcolm has seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor, and Debbie, I'll do a roll call for you. Signify by saying aye. Aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Debbie?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. To the next agenda item. Switched over here and into manager's report. First item is the sublease stock recommendation for District 7 for, I'll probably mispronounced this, Polling or Polling?
Polling.
Polling and Mullins. Mike,
Are
looks like-
we up already?
Yes.
Okay, so I met with Harry Polling at the Chitwood site. And there's already a dock there, and I suggested that he put it next to the dock where the mouth of the bay opens up, so he could put that out perpendicular to the bank. Adam approved it, so I'm just looking for a board approval for the Polling dock in the Chitwood area. And then if you want to do them both, I did not meet with the Mullins. They are on, they're building the new house on the Snug Harbor. But they will have to put theirs parallel with the bank. And Adam has approved that.
You're comfortable with both of those?
I am.
Very good. Do we have a motion to authorize both of those subleases as presented? I will do so. Malcolm has moved, Steve has seconded. Any further discussion? Seeing none, we'll do a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Debbie?
Aye. I had to unmute myself, sorry.
Motion carries unanimously. Next item is the septic testing mandate, which is only a discussion item tonight. So,
Correct. Yeah, we have talked for a while about how to reduce E. coli, septic testing issues that we've had, kind of what can be done about that. As a conservancy district, there is authority to mandate septic testing within the conservancy, because that goes in line with our enhancing and improving, maintaining water quality. So in order to look at some of the ways that has been done, I reached out to Cordray Sweetwater Conservancy District to go who I know has this in place. And in the board packet, what you see is their resolution titled 2007-10, where they implemented the mandatory septic testing. And what they do is on a rotating basis. I'm not exactly sure how many districts they have, but it's similar to ours where they have a handful of districts. So they go on a rotating basis where I think in here it said every 5 years, each property owner would have to pay to have their septic tested. Now, the way that is generally done is through dye testing, where they'll actually put dye into like the toilets and sinks, run it through, and then they wait a handful of hours up to a day, then they look for the leaching of that dye out into the water so they could tell if there's enough residence time within the septic to break it down, or if it's kind of flowing straight through. I had talked with Brett Huber, the District 3 rep, who was not able to be here today, but he actually was looking at a property in Monroe County and just had a testing done. And I think it was $250 to have the health department come out and do the dye testing. So if we were to implement something like that, I think it would have to be along those same parameters where we would say, you know, districts 1 and 2 would be year 1, 3 and 4, year 2, et cetera, until we go around on a rotating basis. That's about the cost that you'd be looking at, would be the $200 to $300 mark on a 5-year basis. In this resolution, that cost is borne by the residents themselves, so the homeowners would pay for that, and then they have to submit the results of a clean test to the Conservancy District.
And if it didn't come up clean, then what?
Yeah.
Well, at that point, it's on record of the health department, so the health department would have to enforce either modifying, enhancing, or replacing the septic. So essentially what this does is it forces the health department to have a recent test. If the health department's aware of a failed or failing septic, then they would require replacement or maintenance on that.
So the problem, area up there by the marina.
Yeah, how long's that been on the health department's list?
Yeah.
They don't have a good track record as far as.
It's not, they're not in the Conservancy, so we could not mandate that. And, I mean, hopefully the sewer lines get run here at reasonable amount of time to capture that, because that has been kind of a nightmare. I do think when you have an individual residence, it'd be a little bit easier for the health department to say, you have to fix this. Cause I know with the Nob Hill Court, they were trying to spend a long time even tracking down a manager or owner, because there's multiple layers of LLCs managing that. So I don't think you'd have that same kind of trouble enforcing them.
So now this also says cleaning. So what constitutes a cleaning of a septic system? You just pump it out?
It's $200, $250 maybe.
So in addition to the $250 for the dye test, you're gonna have to pay a couple hundred for the pumping. So we're talking $450.
And I would assume most people get their septics, well, I don't want to assume anything, but hopefully most people get their septics pumped out on a regular basis. So that would be something too, where we could, you know, if they were on schedule to do it, they could just notify us that, hey, we had our pumped, and they have an invoice. That way it wasn't, you know, they just had it pumped and now all of a sudden we're like, all right, you have to do both these at once. I think if they were to let us know, show us that it was actually done, that could count as that.
Well, can you even do the testing if you pump the thing out and they put dye in there, it's gonna take a while to get from your tank to the field. Wonder if there's some timing issue there that would have to be looked at.
I would say we'd probably have to reach out to the health department on that
Yeah.
to see what they would
It's almost like
recommend.
you'd have to do the dye test first, then pump it.
Yeah, I think we'd have to ask the health department for
Yeah.
recommendation.
Well, I certainly want to see clean water and all of that, and then very much, you know. The point is, we're sitting right on the cusp here where we are very likely to soon have sewers around part of the lake, and that will create impetus to do it around the rest of the lake. And on the other side of that, okay, if the health department says, we find you in, you know, in contempt or whatever they do, then what do? You have to put in a mounted system now. You're talking like $30,000. So this is like a huge penalty on freeholders if anything goes wrong. So I'm kind of hesitant to jump in on this.
I mean, yeah, it would be a shame to force somebody to do that and then. next
Right,
year
and
they
2
run
years
out.
later, you get a sewer put in.
Yeah.
You know, Adam, you were talking about, when I read this, and I'd have to read it again, it's been a while, but you talk about the involvement of the health department, but I thought I specifically read that this Cortez Sweetwater board formed a committee, you know, to be able to monitor this. And so let's say I just decided to go have Knox sewer, you know, or septic, you know, come out and test it. And we bought a number of properties too with our kids that, you know, they come out and they actually somehow they don't even put the dye in the house. I mean, you know, somehow they do run it through. You know, and then you get some sort of certification from them. I mean, are you sure this goes through the health department? Or does it go to the committee? Because then it said that the corrective actions, the system should be evaluated and completed by a licensed professional company, evaluation reports monitored by the committee, corrective actions undertaken by the freeholder.
The health department would be one, the people I would consider a licensed professional. I mean, I guess otherwise there's probably septic installation companies that would.
Yeah, there are a lot of people out there. I mean, that'll examine it before you buy a property.
My question is that I think that from a board standpoint, you ought to say, yes, we're gonna do this for reason A, B, and C. And if it costs a little more, well, I'm sorry. If we think it's important enough, can you say, oh, because it's another couple $100, you don't have to do it? No. We're gonna have to say, we think this is important, and here are the reasons why it's important, and here are the expectations. And we get somebody or get some writing that the Board of Health will enforce it for us, because if we don't have an enforcer, there's no point in.
That's what you need. We're gonna get an enforcer.
Well, I don't know.
Well, that's, I mean, are they, you know, you're gonna let 3 committee members knock on your door and say, here's the dye, pour it down your toilet. We'll wait a few hours and see if you're leaking into the lake. Would that be okay with you? We knock on your door?
Well, that's probably not gonna work.
Well, I mean, there's no enforcement. You can't enforce things on the lake. I mean, we can't write tickets. We really don't have an enforcement agency on, as a board.
Well, what does Cortez Sweetwater do?
They formed this committee. And that item number 3 on the therefore let it be resolved, and I felt like they formed the committee and they also had an end time for that committee. I felt like it was just the first 5 years or something.
Staff is the way it was. But the thing is, I'm kind of with the same discussion here. I'm not sure we really have an enforcement mechanism. You know, one of our biggest issues that we know about that's providing E. coli and contamination to the lake is not even within the Conservancy District. And as Mike has stated at the beginning of the discussions, the health department, both at the county and state level, have been of no benefit or help in getting that resolved. You know, I think there's I certainly advocate for clean water within the lake, and we do testing on it, and we don't, when we have the most issues is when we have storm events, which is a known factor to create it, whether or not that's human E. coli or from other sources. You know, that happens, it dilutes very quickly, and then our testing is very clean. So part of me is, you know, why I very much advocate for trying to ensure the water is clean as possible. I'm concerned about enforceability of this, the practicality of any effectiveness to it, and part of me thinks, what problem are we trying to solve?
We'll throw in one more thing, is every time I've talked to like a home inspector about dye testing, they say, well, yeah, it's kind of effective sometimes, depends on whether it's rained, depends on what the weather's been, how high the water table is. Okay.
Well, actually, live example, my son lives in Orlando, and both of his houses that he bought, he had them tested beforehand, and both of them, he had problems with the field and had to have them replaced within a few years. So, to your point, Malcolm. Well, here's what I think we should do. I agree with everything you guys have said, but I think we need to keep the topic front and center. A few years ago, we talked about all this water testing and what are best practices, keeping your leaves out, keeping your septic operating, blah, 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 blah. I think we need to start talking about it in our communication and our messages to our freeholders. We could maybe talk about this whole sewer system that's going in and just encourage people. We need some sort of a best practices. And after we raise these taxes, we've got this sediment thing going. I mean, maybe it's a plan that we're just kind of working on, not for today, but begin to really try to emphasize or educate our freeholders about what should be done.
Isn't there a sewer meeting in Liverpool Park June 12th?
And there are some say, yes, so there will be, we will advertise that in the newsletter. So the Brown County and Helmsburg Regional Sewer Districts will be hosting a public meeting to talk about their preliminary engineering reports and progress for the sewer system coming. And there are already some safeguards in place aside from the Conservancy District. Currently, Monroe County requires functioning septic to be on permit anytime there's a property transfer. So anytime there's a house sale, they have to say that we have a recent septic in place or something put in. So you do have a little bit of a safeguard there. And then once that sewer's done, I mean, there's, I don't know, half the homes, but a huge chunk of the homes that would potentially
Brown
be on
County
this.
does also unless you pay cash.
Yeah.
That to whom? So, I think what we could do though is encourage everybody when the sewers come to get on that, because it'll be optional, you can say, and do I want to put in, $2,000 and hook up or not? You really do. I mean, we can kind of push that somehow.
And that could be a good point of implementation as well, to say, hey, we got the option for a sewer here. If you're gonna opt out of that, well, then that may trigger. showing
The
us.
testing requirement,
Yeah.
right?
And another component, I mean, another advantage of connecting to a sewer system is it also more easily allows you to increase the number of bedrooms in
Size
your
of your
homes,
house, yes.
because you're not tied to what.
Your house will have higher value by virtue of doing it.
So Adam, when you did talk to the Fort Rich Sweetwater people, did you ask them or did they say anything about enforcement? I mean, how they do it?
When I talked to them, they pretty much use the health department. So that way, if there was a failing septic, it's on the health department's record, and then they would implement enforcement to get it fixed. So what you wouldn't want to have is Joe Blow, the septic guy, and it's like, an extra $50. Like, yeah, it looks good. So you couldn't just have anybody do it. I think you would have to rely on one of the governmental agencies
What county is
for
that?
better or worse. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah, the dye is orange, and when you pour it down your toilet, it turns green when it comes out. And so, you can buy the dye if you want to check your own septic system. You can buy it, pour it down your toilet, look for yourself. Then you can report yourself.
Well, this was a discussion item, and generally the consensus I hear is that the idea of promoting best practices as far as maintaining systems, as encouraging people to attend the meeting to learn more about the sewer system, and as the opportunity presents to connect to the sewer system. I think it's more of an educational component as opposed to a resolution or formal action taken by this board, and that doesn't require any action.
Would you like to throw in that, if any information that can be obtained about how other lakes, reservoirs throughout the state and the country can be incorporated in our knowledge base?
Sure.
Part of it.
I think having staff continue to investigate best practices in other state, around other lakes is a good idea, so.
And we'll try to consolidate some information from like IDEM and local health departments to see what we can't share in our newsletters on our website. I'm sure they have some resources as well on best practices.
Any other discussion on this item? Seeing none, we'll move to item C, Finger Docks Design Ordinance Change Update.
All right, we reached out after the last meeting regarding finger dock designs and length. We've talked with the city council administrative. They are aware of the issue. I'm currently waiting a contact from their attorney. I'm not sure how fast it's going right now with the new mayor in place. Not that has anything to do with the mayor, but I think they're just kind of tied up on stuff. But they are aware of the problem. They're currently looking who the process would be and our best pathway to contact. It'll likely have to be us coming to the City of Bloomington Utilities Board and having them champion that to go to the city council. I did learn that the city council wasn't even aware that the city owned Lake Lemons. That was very, very interesting. But we are still working on that. It's in process. We have been in touch. So as we get updates on that, we'll bring that back to the board.
You are to take office actually in January. So that's the, it's just the primaries that.
Yeah, it's not a new mayor yet.
But it is still election season, although I'm sure most of the races in Bloomington are tested, so, but usually things kind of slow down in an election. Operational update. IDG.
Right, I've got a couple things we're gonna go over here. I'm gonna share a PowerPoint just because of the pictures. And we have our other screen there now, so you'll be able to.
Yeah, so don't think I'm staring at you if I'm looking at
Yeah.
that direction. We're looking at the screen directly behind you.
Blow this up here. All right, just a 2023 dredging update. As of the last payment, which was in April, there were over 70,000 yards. I think it's moving along quicker this year as far as yardage because the booster pump is working. They are running into some hard pan areas near right where the creek channel is, but so far they've been able to cut through all the sediment. Yeah.
So is this in addition to the 60,000 or is this 10,000 over the 60?
This was 10,000 over 60, so they started in the end of March.
But we're already where we would be at the end of the season. If we were mechanically dredging.
Yeah.
Yes, correct. Yeah, in a month. And along those same lines, the McCullough that was on the water doing that, I can't wait to get their final.
Let me know when
numbers.
I can talk about that.
Yeah, once we get their final numbers, I think they'll have taken out in a month with a big barge what we would do pretty much in a year with part-time. But on this, oh, is that showing? So these are actually some pictures that I took from today. So this is looking north off of Ellis Point. So the whole barge setup is east of Ellis Point, which is awesome because historically when you're coming out of Ellis Point, you'd have to cut down to the causeway and loop all the way around and come to the north. Now you can just come out, you can cut to the north, you can head straight out. So there was areas that they're in now, which in Norman Pool are less than 6 inches of water on a good day that they're moving through. So they're moving along pretty efficiently. And then this was, I really like this picture because it showed the Ellis Point there, and then you can see the barge, how far it is to the east of that. I mean, so these were areas that were completely non-navigable or usable. So it's pretty awesome to see the actual visual perspective of how far they're getting there.
Is that the sign that's out on the tip?
Correct, yeah,
So we're looking.
yeah. So you're looking kind of northeast there.
See Possum Trot.
And then these are a couple weeks ago, we took this at the Upland disposal site. I'm showing these because you can only see the sediment level above the water line there in a pretty small portion of it. I know we've had some residents and other folks that have talked about, it seems like, there's a lot of room still remaining in this upland site. Actually last week, the barge, the hydraulic dredger had to get a part replaced, so they're down for a couple days. So we're actually able to pump the water down quite a bit. This was in that same time frame, and you can kind of see some of the sediment that's of it. This was taken last week. Once we were able to pump that down, probably another 3 to 4 feet. So just kind of showing the areas that you cannot see underwater between this and then here as we got that down. And that sediment kind of tapers, it doesn't just drop off where the end of that is, it tapers down. So we're actually entering a point now where we're starting to test the total suspended solids coming out of the outflow more frequently, because that's kind of what dictates once we're functionally full is once we don't have the settling time. So this is, that area that you can see right now is probably about a third of the actual surface.
So are
That's
they,
the level right
they
there.
dredging today and tomorrow?
Yes, yeah,
Okay, so I could take a sample.
yeah, absolutely, yeah.
So how does the sediment move? I mean, Does it just naturally kind of flow to the other end and make room for the?
Yeah, it just kind of, it picks the path of least resistance, so it's actually worked out really nicely where we haven't had to use polymers, because once an area starts to pile up, it naturally kind of shifts and cuts another channel, and kind of how the delta forms where it zigzags and it'll break and come back and forth. And then they can kind of control it as well by the water level. When the water level was actually real high a couple of weeks ago, and you have water coming out of the actual spillway, there's not as much residence time for the sediment to settle out. Since we're able to pump the water down to about 5 feet below that spillway, there's a lot more residence time for that sediment to come in and settle out. So they can kind of help the settlement settle out faster and closer to the input by lowering that water level as well. And since they're moving the further east that they get with the heaviest and largest sediment settling out first, it's actually settling out quicker the further east they go, because you're getting out of those silts, you're getting into the larger kind of sand particles, so.
Yeah, what's coming out now of the pipe is definitely noticeably darker and like a different particle size than what was originally coming out.
As the wind changes, it comes in Salmon Harbor Cove. And I asked Malcolm to come over and test our cove, because we have a film on top. Not discouraged about it, but I mean, you know, because if the wind's blowing the correct way and we get a rain, then it blows it back out. But it has, you know, as it's coming back in the lake, the film is coming into our cove, so.
Yeah, and you can see, like in this picture, you can see really well, I don't really have a pointer, but as the water has fluctuated in this by, you know, probably 7 to 8 feet quite often, and it actually has helped it quite a bit. Here, it's kind of, the water that's being pumped in is like moving to the north and flowing along, or sorry, the south side of that and flowing along the south end. It was flowing out of the north last year for quite a long time, and as the water, you know, really raises up, it's allowed a lot of that to drop out and create like this mounding that you see here. And then when we draw the water down and they turn it on, it pushes that all out once again as it finds its, you know, path to the main basin of that upland site. So it really has been helpful to like allow it to raise up and get that mound and then blow it back out.
And then,
But you can see here.
yeah.
Well.
So as the water drew down, it started cutting, again, the path of least resistance that heads out. So it's been spreading out pretty nicely in there.
So what zone would you say that the barge is in as it's moving north?
Well, we're kind of moving east. I think we're still straddling that zone 1.
So are we going to go to the maintenance line then? Is that the plan?
That's the way the zones are set out, or to that vegetation
Okay.
maintenance line there.
Okay, so it'll actually move more easterly.
Correct, yeah. The southern boundary of that zone 1 is essentially where Bean Blossom Creek is. So they are moving east right now as they continue to cut. They're tracking east. So their north and south boundaries are kind of remaining parallel there.
So just if I had neighbors that wanted to purchase additional sediment removal from the hydraulic system, is that possible?
It would have to be proposed to the board. That
Okay.
would be a board discussion.
Okay, and it would be $6 a cubic yard. That's it.
The current rate that we pay is $6. I think all set in the cost was closer to 8 once we include mobilization and everything, but they're per yard costs in the contract.
So my next point, you called me yesterday and you said that McCulloch had found east of Ellis Point that there was some sediment. Now, I can tell you, I've been out on the water for a month and a half, almost 2 months, and it's 3.8 to 4 foot from the Gentry's dock to Ellis Point. It's been that way for 2 months. Now, if he somehow has moved that shelf, and you know what I'm talking about, the shelf that comes back up where it's only less than a foot deep. I would ask the board, you know, if McCulloch has disturbed that shelf, I would ask the board. Adam said it would cost us $700 for him to dig that out. You know, if he hasn't been on this lake. This is the first year he's been on this lake. You know, but if he has somehow, when I go out on the water tomorrow and I call Adam And if he's disturbed that shelf, I would like the board to consider that the board rectify that problem. Right, Adam?
I don't believe that a shelf has been impacted. When we take our pontoon boat around Ellis Point, right around the corner, we always hit the ground with our prop. And I don't know if any other residents
You have a
experience
depth
that.
finder?
We hit the surface with it. So, and honestly, the way that he's doing now is pushing out, that barge will push sediment out of the way.
So he's probably, he is probably, I don't know where he's gone, but he's probably damaged that shelf. He's probably knocked that shelf into our channel. And I'll know tomorrow.
Okay.
So I'm just asking the board to consider spending the $700 to have McCullough dig that back out.
So
It was 700 a load.
Well, yeah, I mean, so I don't know how many loads, but there was no problem last weekend. Thank you.
so what are they dredging down here?
Yeah, where is he? Where is McCullough dredging?
In front of my house.
Okay,
Sorry.
okay, so
I
he's,
talked to him today.
And have you noticed, sorry to bring, have you noticed any decrease, any shallow areas as you're going around the Ellis Point out into the creek?
Okay.
So, yeah,
There is one. It's not big,
no.
but there's a spot where it's like 3.5, 3.5, 3.5, 3.5, 3.
Yeah,
There's also another one in the middle of East Bay from last year's dredging. There's two of them.
thank you.
Okay, and that's not gonna be touched.
well, so, I mean, so the maintenance line comes off of Hingeveld's A-frame. Let's say, okay, that was the girl that complained about the noise.
Yes.
We'll get on that next. But it comes off of her A-frame and goes straight across the lake and makes some kind of jog in front of Pam Dugan's house. Thank you, Michael, for laughing at that. I really appreciate that. So that's the maintenance line. And if the board would like to consider even moving that further east, that would be pleasant for the whole lake. Right, Malcolm?
I think it's something we could do actually, Adam, because it used to act as a stopper for sediment coming in. But if we dredge it out, that will also act as a stopper, so.
Then that is,
We could put that on an agenda in June.
that is a DNR permit. We do not have the authority to.
We'll
move that line.
we'll request.
Yeah, and we have, so we could request it in a permit change, that's correct.
It seems to me, didn't we move that line some time ago? And that wasn't that a big discussion when Pam was on the board and we moved it over, and it was kind of difficult to get that permission to move it as far as we moved it, right? Is this the same situation we're talking about?
We moved it out to the west because we couldn't treat in the areas, and then we did a compromise line and it went further back to the east in that center line. Kind of the points between Eidolon and Ellis Point. So that did get moved further east in probably 2019-ish.
Yeah. There was some discussion. Some people weren't too comfortable with that, but it got pushed through.
And then with the dredging onto the sound,
Thank you.
we did receive quotes for the fencing and the sound curtains. We have talked with Heartland Dredging. They said that their pumps are outfitted with a shell on it that reduces, I don't know, however many decibels. And then they feel that decibel reduction in the design is kind of what their effort was to reduce that. So if we were to look at, actually, you want to talk about the sound curtain?
Yeah, I mean, I called a number of places and this is just one of the quotes, but this is from E-Noise Control. And the reason I put theirs up here is because they're in Noblesville, so we can literally just run up to their warehouse and get it. So all the other quotes, once you take shipping out, they're just as cheap as anybody else and the location makes it quite convenient. But they're 4 foot wide by 10 foot tall noise curtains, basically, that you would attach to chain link fencing with metal zip ties. And we kind of did some rough estimates of how much we would need. And so, really, you're looking at $300 a piece for a 3 foot or a 4 foot by 10 foot panel. So probably about $3,600 of that to encapsulate that pump. And then that's just the paneling. You would need the fencing as well. So I kind of looked, I think the easiest option would be these like temporary fences that you put up around concerts and events, and it's chain link pre-made that you just slip on, throw some sandbags over it, and then attach those fencing to. And we can get 50 feet of that to go around as well for about $1,000. That's without shipping, so there would be some added costs. So you're probably looking around $5,000 total in materials to put a sound barrier around the 3 sides of that, the road, the east and the west.
And did you remember what the estimated decibel reading?
Yeah, they said 10 to 20 decibels. So I don't know, I don't really know what it's putting out. I'm not a sound engineer, so I don't know if it's 60 or 100 or,
That's my question, is how effective is it gonna be and how can they predict that?
yeah.
Right.
You spend $5,000, okay, is it worth $5,000? It might be, but it might not be.
Yeah, and I don't know how long that pump will be in that location as we.
Well, that was my question. Yeah, how long will it really be there? I mean, it's been there a long time and that we don't have a lot more room left right there for now.
So if the pump, and I don't know, again, will they utilize that pump if they're going to the overflow pond, since there's not as much head pressure, there'll be longer distances. I'm not sure about that. Are they gonna have that pump on a barge in the middle of the lake? Would we want something out there to reduce the noise if it was kind of floating along the causeway somewhere?
Have we had a lot of complaints about it? I mean, have there been a lot of complaints?
The Hagenvelds, is that Hagenvelds, they are the closest, and they live full-time. I mean, I can understand it is an
Yeah,
inconvenience.
yeah, I've driven by there and
Right,
rolled the window down and.
right. No one, I don't know what the decibel level is, but I don't think anyone's saying that it's quiet.
Yeah.
Does it go like 24 hours a day?
No, it's on, when they get there at, I don't know, 6:30, 7 o'clock.
Yeah.
Until
About 6.
4:30,
About
6.
12 hours a day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say so. And then, I mean, it's hard to say exactly, that's, we're gonna step up the testing to look at the outflow water to see when we need to change, because when we change, we'll notify DNR about our permitting, we're gonna show them the data, that way everybody's on board when we're functionally full, and then make the change, so that's all good to go. I don't picture that that would be much longer than maybe July of this year, when we will start to.
Yeah, it just seems to me it would just be a sunk cost. I mean, I do understand and I feel badly for those people if they really, but it is during the day. It's like, I don't know how loud it is, but it seems to me we just don't have enough information.
I think what is important for us to understand is if we were, if we're to make this investment, is it actually gonna make substantial difference? Because, I mean, obviously it is loud and it is intrusive to that neighbor. 2, when we do change where we're putting the sedimentation, where is a pump going to be necessary? And if so, where is it going to be located? Because that also lets us know who else might be impacted by it. And again, if it can be used and it's relocated to wherever the pump is going effectively, and it truly does make a difference in sound, then it's an investment that's more than for a couple months. It's a longer term investment. So, I mean, I kind of agree with Debbie. We don't have all the facts to make a decision.
I think about whenever I buy things, there's got to be some place, you guys, besides these places, like all these reviews on Amazon. Oh, this is, don't buy, there's got to be somebody that's reviewed this and says how well it works, and then the decibels, I guess I'd have to know, that doesn't mean anything to me. It's like, it'll reduce it 50%, like that's kind of what I'm looking for. Like, what percent is it going to make a difference? Or are they looking for silence,
If it reduces it by 10 decibels, that'd be a factor of 10% or 10 decibels is 50%, so I mean, it'll cut the sound way down, it'll appear to.
Okay.
So do you need a motion to purchase this thing? Is that what you, because it's been 3 months since she came to a board meeting and, you know, asked that we do something, so, you know, I would give it a try. You can move it, it's portable.
Right, we would have it forever.
Right.
Do you need any portable fencing? I mean, for the park or anything?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, that we could,
So that part would be usable.
yes. Like the snow fence that we bought for the boogie, we'll use for 4th of July. That's really actually why we needed it, is for the 4th of July. More so even.
But how can you?
So I
say
guess I'm not understanding how you get to $5,000, Ross.
it's gonna be
This,
better? That's like Debbie was saying, and I agree with her, is how do we figure out that it's gonna be worth $5,000?
You really want me to answer that, Steve?
Well, I asked the question.
So if we're gonna spend $6,000 again on fundraising, and we're gonna form a committee, we're gonna try to do fundraising, people are not gonna give money to the lake when, on page 8, 13 people complained on the park plan that there was no more boat mooring. And we still really don't have boat mooring at the beach, and we won't have boat mooring at the beach. You can look at page 8 of the plan. It's online.
what does that have to do with the
Can
fence, Mike?
I finish?
Yeah,
So when you raise taxes on people, I mean, you've heard everybody here talk about taxes and, you know, how much that is. If you want to do fundraising, go with the Boys and Girls Club. We went with the girl that Debbie recommended. She said lakes are last. I was at that meeting. First place is kids, second place is schools, third place is churches. We have none of that on the lake unless we build a church, but we have a Boys and Girls Club that we could partner with and get money for the lake. And I've brought this up at many, many, many meetings. So we've spent $6,000, but I don't know what we've done with that $6,000. This is $5,000 for a neighbor who says, can we do something about the noise?
I don't get your point. Are you saying if you're gonna spend this for this, and how can you spend this, I don't know what you're trying to say. Are you trying to say?
I'm saying people aren't gonna donate money when all you get is, I mean, I've been on this board over 8 years. And I hear the complaints from people. And boat mooring is one of them. I don't get the mooring, but can I pull up to a dock at the beach and drop my granddaughter off so she can swim at the beach? I don't want to pull over behind the bathhouse and walk around the bathhouse to go to the beach.
but Mike, that doesn't have anything to do with this fence discussion. Are we on to another topic now? Is this a second topic?
But I understand what you're trying to say either. Are you saying that we shouldn't spend money foolishly? I think that's why we should evaluate. If you think that, well, we can't ask people to donate because we keep not doing what they think we should do, I don't know what you're trying to say, but I don't think we should spend the money on this unless we have some evidence that it's really gonna help the people.
And that we can move it and that we know when that pump is gonna move. I feel like the staff, I feel like Mike Klutzing's suggestion was correct, that he articulated some while ago. We need to do those studies. We need to figure out how much longer that's gonna be there and when we're gonna be able to move it.
So I'm going to ask the question as part of this discussion. If we were to identify that the fencing solution that staff has, or something substantially similar at around say it's even $7,000, was to be effective and could be used in another location, is that something that this board would be willing to entertain?
Yes.
So maybe one of the things that we can do, because our next meeting isn't for a month, and if we can, if there is a way for us to implement something that is effective and we're comfortable doing so, is there a way that we can pass a motion that authorizes the expenditure subject to the validation that it's actually going to work? with a report back to the board.
So who's gonna get the information?
It's that, I mean, that,
I guess, Mike, I would say, why doesn't the staff go back and bring the information back to the officers and we would give the authorization for it? I'd like to know a little bit more about this 4th of July fencing and how else we think we could use it in the park if it's not just going to be the pump. You know, if there are other uses for it, then that's positive too.
You say that you've done some research on it and.
Yeah, I mean, on their website, they say 10 to 20 decibels of noise
I
reduction.
mean, all we need to do is find out who they've sold it to and. see.
Right, ask them. Yeah, I don't want to believe what they said on their website. I want to hear the users and what they say about it.
So 10 to 20 decibel reduction of whatever's there. Is that?
Well, that's it. I can reach out, I can talk to Heartland, see if they'll be utilizing that pump when they move, or their best guesstimate of that, when they think it'll be, and find out what the actual noise level is somehow.
Right, because I don't know, you know, short of like buying a decibel meter and finding out what it is now, I still don't know like what I would do to find out the effectiveness
I
of what.
think you can download that as an
Yeah,
app.
I was
Okay,
like,
okay, so I would know what it is now, but I still wouldn't have any assurances aside from what these companies can provide me on what it will do. And I think, you know, the atmosphere that it's in, what it can bounce off is all gonna affect that. I don't know, short of buying it and putting it there, how we would really have much more assurance than what we know now on what effectiveness it.
Well, if we can use phones, and we can go get some information and then get back very shortly with the officer or something.
is that something the board
Yes,
would be?
thank you.
I'd like to have that in a motion.
I'll make that motion.
Nice move. Do I have a second?
Sure, I'll second it.
Malcolm has second. Any further discussion? I'll call the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Debbie,
Aye.
motion carries unanimously.
And what does the motion say exactly that I just voted on? How did you word that? Will it come back to the executive?
Purchase the fencing and sound barrier, subject to validation that it is going to provide effect.
10 to 20%, right?
And with review by or conference with the officers. So that way staff's just not spending it.
Right, because it's subject to these things Adam just said he was gonna do too. Right.
Yes, yeah.
That's the due diligence.
But just be aware that the human ear is very nonlinear in your ability to hear sound. So if you take it down 10 dB, that's a factor of 10. I mean, it's 10 times the log of its ratio of powers. So like if it were 20 dB, that's supposedly a factor of 100. Okay, but it will sound a lot louder. You know, the equipment will say that's what it is, but I can sure still hear that.
I think it's important to state, I don't think there's any circumstance by where the sound goes away.
Right, it's not
If
gonna
we-
go away.
If we can make it so that it's more tolerable for nearby residents to be in their home when it's happening, I think that is something.
Is this, I'm kind of Googling this now. Is this considered an acoustic fence, Ross?
We can look at options as well.
Yeah.
I just spent too much on this. We have authorization. We'll bring some information.
All right, yeah, because I mean, they're talking about acoustic fences, and if they're really close, they can be effective and they can absorb up to 20 to 25% of the noise, depending on how close it is to that. So I don't even know if it's the same thing. So yeah, do some research.
All right, we'll do that.
Last topic on, or statement on that, is that completely different application, but we have acoustic fence around our football courts in Carmel. And they do make, obviously completely different application, but pickleball is also allowed sport with the constant homes that we have with that compared to tennis. And it does make a significant difference for our residents. So there's hope. That's why I think that it's worth investing.
Keep hope alive.
And then I wanted to give an update on the fundraiser that we did and some of the feedback and statistics that we have. Over 275 tickets were sold with the Boogie. We had 5 vendors, merch vendors. After paying for the guy that did it all, the sound production, all that, the company that did that, I want to say there was, what was it? It was over $10,000 that whole thing cost, which was not on us. That was out of the proceeds. We ended
All
up
the bands.
for the bands, for the sound, for all that kind of stuff. We ended up with proceeds of $6,200 from the event. So they ran it with all the proceeds from the event, came back to the LLCD. So we got $6,200 in proceeds
They got 10.
from that event. Well, the company ran the whole program.
So that's
More than
not,
we got?
no, that's not $10,000 to them.
Oh.
So the lighting guy got like a
That's
few hundred,
cost, yeah.
the band, one of the bands got,
6,200 was to net
yeah.
Yes, that was what, yes, correct.
Out of
Yeah.
10.
Okay.
So that was, after everything was paid for, we got $6,200 for this event. So we did send out some feedback for this first event, because I mean, really this was kind of a proof of concept to see if we could generate money in the future. So how people would rate it overall, we got 40 responses so far, which out of only 275, that's pretty statistically significant. So I mean, almost 90% right there, we see we're at a level of 4 and 5 out of 4 and 5 on how they would rate the event overall. And then kind of talked about where they heard from the event from, primarily Facebook and the newsletter. There also were radio ads and billboard ads and that kind of thing. So the primary, so these are the people that actually filled out the survey. 67% were attendees on land and 17% were attendees on boat. And then resident status as well. 27% were residents, so 70% of the people that came were non-residents. So that was a significant draw in non-residents coming to the lake. Many of them through our discussions had never even heard of Riddle Point Park or the lake at all. Everybody that we talked to was like very happy about it, and they said they can't wait to come back again if we continue to do some stuff like this. And we actually did have a couple board members that were there. I know Steve and Les were there, as well as Brett. So we had quite a few residents, but then primarily non-residents coming. It was mostly their first time coming out to the lake. So then we kind of looked at our age group statistics and adults, you know, the 30 to 70-year-old range. Consider attending another music event at Riddle Point Park, resounding 92.5, yes. And actually, I was in town at their Cosmic Songwriters Club recently, and I heard people talking about the Riddle Point Boogie, both that they loved it, and then also that they wish they could have attended because they were elsewhere. So I think kind of like that music scene in Bloomington at the venues where there was advertised and stuff, there was definitely quite a bit of draw on it. Next thing that we asked, like, what types of music, and again, I really like the same type of music, so if we were to do like a little pavilion out there to draw stuff in, we'd want to kind of do some different genres so we could capture the most people out. Over by far, rock was the first requested one. Singer-songwriter, which is kind of what we had this time, about 50%. But what we would do see is that people would like to see different genres and would come out to attend that. I also think there would be a lot more potential applications working with like the Bloomington Playwrights Project or other venues for arts that you could have out there. I think the biggest draw was having art on the point, on the water. People absolutely loved it. So again, would you consider another music event? Yes. And then for the sponsors, they believed the event was well advertised. I haven't read through these ones too much, but I think the sponsors were happy. I think we raised a good amount of money, like the electricity cost, that's some cost. We have that pedestal now, we have electricity. We're not gonna have another Steve Love installation of a pedestal that we have that there now. So I do think overall it was a very strong proof of concept to have arts out there. And then we had a couple of pictures. We didn't have any professional photographers out there. But we did have some like pictures from the day, and it was so cool to see Riddle Point Park being used out there. People were having happy, loving time. It was very family friendly. There was lots of kids running around. So I think it was, overall, I think it was a very successful event, especially for the first time as a proof of concept. I think you could only get more people as people find out about it, realize that's potentially a thing. So I would say overall it was a resounding success for the first one.
I wish I could have been there, but, would it be
Me too.
on you guys if we moved it to like Memorial Day weekend? I realize you're really busy.
The thing is, the park is, we're already slammed on Memorial Day weekend. So on the holiday weekends, I'm not sure that we would see an increase of the amount of people that we already have. But I think if we did have like, if we were to go back eventually at some time, like the little pavilion or something, I think the stage rental was a great idea doing that for this first time. But if you were to have it there, I think you could do smaller things throughout the summer. I would probably steer away from the holidays just because we already
How
are
about
at capacity.
if you did it the weekend? You were actually quite lucky, of course, that the weather was not horrible because you did it early in the month. If you did it like the weekend before Memorial Day, then people could come and stay over and, it becomes a week.
I agree. I mean, I think it'd be really cool to do a handful of things throughout the summer. And then, do like a rock time, maybe do like a blues or a jazz thing. I think kind of mix up the genres and get people out. But I think everybody was so excited to come out.
If you do a techno, I want sound curtains around my house.
Yes,
Were the food vendors happy?
they were happy. Yes, the food vendors were happy. And then we also started having food vendors out at the 4th of July last year. And they were incredibly happy. I think they all actually sold out of food last year. And then this 4th of July, we will have food vendors out there again. And I've talked with Debbie, we ran out of product. If the product was spacing last year for the 4th of July, so we are raising that to $25 per vehicle from 20. And I hope we get a 25% reduction in vehicles and keep the proceeds the same. I have a feeling.
I thought you decided to go to 30.
We were kind of back and forth on that, but kind of talking around, we thought 30 was a big jump. But so we are raising that money. We are having food truck vendors out again for that.
It's better than paying $50 to park at a swimming hole in Fishers.
Yeah, wow.
Adam, do you have any thoughts on timing of another event? And I totally agree trying to bring it in. I'm hearing feedback. Sorry, I don't know if you guys can hear me, but do you have an idea on timing of a future event?
I would like to at least do a fall event. I think we'll have to plan it either in advance or maybe it's some volunteers or something if we're gonna do smaller ones throughout the year. I mean, it did take up some time and running that day of was exhausting by the end of it. But I would love to do a September thing. I mean, honestly, I was thinking right when the students come back, you could honestly have another one and maybe try to capture that student crowd. And that one, I was kind of thinking if you had a DJ Malcolm, you could play off the barge to the beach, you have the water and the beach, amphitheater, and I think there's a lot of room for potential. So we're still brainstorming. We're gonna come up with ideas, but I think it was huge. I mean, everybody was so happy on the land. Everybody was so thankful. It was great.
I do realize the marina did it the next weekend with music and food trucks, and they don't charge.
Yeah, we're trying to raise money.
I know,
Yeah,
I'm just saying,
yeah.
you know, they do it right on the other side of the lake and don't charge $45 plus fees.
Yeah,
I mean, I think that company got a ridiculous amount of money for what they did. That's my,
Thank you.
I mean, we should have gotten more of that money. It should have been a 50-50 or something. I mean, they shouldn't have gotten more than what the lake got.
And how much risk you want to assume, right? And
yeah, we
each time,
assumed no risk on
risk.
that.
Most of the time, like park systems are getting a 20 to 30% cut. So I don't think it's an unreasonable amount for event management. I would advocate that if we do more, I think it's better to do a couple good events as opposed to, especially as we are getting into a newer area, as opposed to a number of smaller ones. Because the smaller ones can take as much time with not as much effect. And I also agree with the suggestion that we not do it on a holiday just because let's find non-peak times to be able to draw it so that we're getting in new money as opposed to just spreading money around. I mean, not a bad idea as far as it would be enjoyable, but from a practicality standpoint, I think it makes sense to go on a non-peak time.
So, I think another lesson too, and which would come back to ticket pricing is doing some like a 3-hour thing with 2 bands instead of, and once you have 5 bands in there, it's all day long, it's the costs add up, but overall, I think resounding awesome, yes, very good proof of concept. I think it's something that we could definitely explore to increase revenue by not increasing boat traffic and bringing people out to utilize the park. That's what I got for that. Before we go to new business, I do know Steve Pretty over here had some.
Oh, yeah, I have something, actually, this is, for the board's information, but could listen to one. I have a brochure here from the city of Carmel. And there's a little, couple sentences here I thought you might want to know. Congratulations to Michael Klitzing, who was appointed to a 3-year term on the Epley Institute for Parks and Public Lands National Advisory Board, where his experience in the parks and recreation field will be shared nationally with other public agencies. That is,
Yay, congratulations.
And as an Illinois alumnus, and my mom having her doctorate from Illinois, I didn't get disowned by being affiliated with IU. So I take it as a
Northern
win.
Illinois? Northern Illinois?
No, University of Illinois.
Champagne.
Yeah. It's an honor. It really was great to be asked to that,
Congratulations,
so
yes.
thank you.
And now you're our chairperson, which is even better.
Right.
One note too, for another year, Lake Lemon was featured in Indianapolis Monthly. So one of 5 lakes where they featured the house on the lake. So just came out today. So any other managers report items?
Can I ask one question?
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Manager? Any progress on getting a second site on the North Shore for trash disposal?
Not really, other than tracking the utilities over there. Nothing to report on.
How's that going?
The what?
Tracking the utility.
We were able to track them. We're able to find out where they were, and they do not, in fact, run through the middle of the field to actually hug kind of the southern boundary to where, like I should say this word quietly, where the wetlands start, and then kind of go up the creeks. I think the bulk of that field would be usable as a
So
potential.
closer to the road, utilities are closer to the road.
Correct, yeah, they kind of go up and hug that
The
southern.
water line though is not on the water line takes a more direct cut, so Possum Trot goes to the north on that field and then cuts back to the east and continues north. And the water line does not follow the road there, it is on the, like by that creek bed. So it's really not in that, it's on the easterly edge of that part.
Maybe at the June meeting, we ought to have on the agenda what Christopher Burke or whoever would tell us what it would cost to prepare that site.
Yeah, let me, I think starting to get some plans or what that would look like. Yeah, I agree.
And continued discussions with CBU.
Correct, yeah.
Capture that. I don't oppose that. Any other last questions for?
Yeah, I do have a question. I just been thinking about this gentleman's dilemma of not being near the lake. And is there a legal way for him to get out of the district? I mean, it sounds like if he's a long way from the lake and stuff, I mean, I get your point. Is it possible for people to opt
Yes,
out?
we ran into that several years ago. And there is, I mean, he has to get a lawyer and he has to petition and he can get out of the district. if he wishes.
Petition us or?
No petition to the judge.
Well, he gets approval from us and then he goes to the judge. It would be a board decision if we wanted to let him out. and then he would go to the circuit court.
And the utilities board has no input in this?
Not really, I mean,
Because they're not part of the, I mean. the
right, they're
district
not
is-
part of the conservancy, they're not part of the taxing units.
I guess, Adam, I'd like to know, how many, how much of our taxing unit, what's the total exposure, if there are several other similar properties, what really would we be losing in terms of tax revenue? But I do sympathize and understand the issue.
I can kind of, it'll be a little difficult to say, because I mean, a lot of people that aren't near the lake have, 180. Some odd people at least have docks and like that we know, so I'm sure there are others. I've never dealt with the process of getting out of the district. I have dealt with the process of annexation into the district. And then I believe the last time this was brought up was a property off of John Young down by the dam. And at that point, the board stated that they were not in the business of decreasing the tax base.
Right.
They kind of dropped off on that.
That came up just while I've been on the board, I thought.
Yeah, it was a couple of years ago.
Somebody wanted to
Yeah.
get in.
We approved it, seems like.
We approved the annexation into the district. We did
Yes.
not approve or decide to go forward with removing a property. from the district.
Right.
Talking about taxes, you guys met with the DLGF person in August last year, the field rep. Did you meet Debbie? Did you and Adam meet with the field? Okay.
Yeah, it was a call. Yeah.
Or you were on a call and not in person?
They don't do in person anymore. It's just.
They don't do in person.
And so when you met with that person, did you explain that we were looking at a special tax assessment on Zoom? And that, did this person tell you that there was gonna be a new statewide reassessment? I'm just curious, because, I don't think anyone knew that there was going to be, in addition to our special tax, that everybody was gonna be reassessed. But the DLGF should have known that. So,
Well, gosh, it seems like every year it seems like there was that one major reassessment several years ago, but it just seems like every year my assessed values are changing. Every year. They never stay the same.
this was a major reassessment, I'm gonna say, which is.
In Brown County or Monroe County?
Both.
I was not aware of that.
Okay, just curious.
Mine, yeah, I wasn't either. Mine didn't go up much from last year to this year at all. My assessed value.
Put it on Facebook.
First statutes are supposed to be tied to somewhat to assessment or, market conditions, so as, and there's been a huge increase in market, not only around Lake Lemon, but throughout the state. Moving on to new business, the next board meeting will be also our annual picnic on Saturday, June 24th, 2023 at Middle Point Park at the Pavilion.
10 a.m.
10 a.m. I do want to wish everyone a happy Memorial Day, safe Memorial Day. Also, thanks to all the veterans and those that serve the country, and especially those that have given their lives so that we can celebrate.
Here.
With that, I'll entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved. Second.
Moved and second, barring any objection, stand adjourned. Absolutely. So, I know.